1888. Boston, Massachusetts. A philosopher walks into a laboratory, not to think, to measure. His name is William James, and he is about to ask the most dangerous question in the history of science. What is a feeling? Not where does it come from, not what does it mean. What is it? Physically, mechanically, inside the body, inside the brain. The establishment calls him a romantic, a poet pretending to be a scientist. They tell him feelings are the soul's territory, not science's. He keeps asking anyway. For the next 130 years, the world will try to answer his question. They will fail. They will be ridiculed. They will be dismissed. And then, they will change everything. This is the story of how the most powerful force in human experience, feeling itself, went from being science's greatest embarrassment to its most important frontier. And what that means for the reality you are living right now. If they did, you can too. Let's go back. All the way back. 1879, Leipzig, Germany. A man named Wilhelm Wundt opens the world's first experimental psychology laboratory. And he makes a decision that will haunt science for a century. He decides that only what can be measured, observed, and replicated is real. Feelings do not qualify. By the early 20th century, behaviorism has taken over. John Watson, B.F. Skinner. The most powerful voices in psychology agree. The inner life does not exist for science. Only behavior. Only stimulus and response. Emotion is noise. Feeling is weakness. The subjective experience of being human is irrelevant. Into this world steps William James, Harvard professor, brother of novelist Henry James, a man who has struggled his entire life with depression, with anxiety, with the crushing weight of his own inner experience. He refuses to believe that what he feels every day is scientifically meaningless. In 1884, he publishes a paper that will become one of the most debated in psychology's history. He asks, do we run because we are afraid? Or are we afraid because we run? He proposes that emotion is the body's response, that feeling is not the cause of physical reaction, it is the physical reaction. The establishment is not impressed. His contemporary Carl Lang publishes similar ideas the same year. Together, their theory carries both their names, the James-Lang theory, and together they are largely ignored. William James dies in 1910, his question unanswered, his theory unproven. The science of feeling still considered by most of the establishment to be no science at all. But the question does not die with him. Decades pass. The brain remains a black box. Instruments are not precise enough. Methods are not sophisticated enough. The inner world of human emotion sits locked behind a wall that science cannot yet climb. Until one man decides the wall itself is worth studying. Paul MacLean, American neuroscientist, 1950s. He proposes something radical, that the human brain is not one structure but three, layered through evolution, and buried in the middle layer, what he calls the limbic system, is the seat of all emotional life. The brokers of behavioral science call him a romantic, a storyteller, a man who has confused poetry for neuroscience. His triune brain theory is debated, revised, challenged for decades. The wall is still standing. But before we meet the people who finally break through it, if this story is already moving something in you, hit that subscribe button right now. Because every Sunday we bring you another story of how humans refuse to accept impossible limits and changed the world. If they did, you can too. Now, let's meet the disruptors. London, University College, the year 2000. Two neuroscientists, Andreas Bartels and Semir Zeki, are about to do something that has never been done in the history of science. They are going to put people who are genuinely, deeply in love inside a brain scanner. Not people who say they are in love, not actors performing love, people who score at maximum levels on standardized love assessments, people whose partners' photographs make their hands shake. The scientific establishment considers this almost embarrassing. Love is not a subject for serious neuroscience. Love is for poets, for philosophers, for the territory William James tried, and failed, to claim for science 100 years earlier. Bartels and Zeki do not care. They slide the first subject into the fMRI machine. They show them a photograph of a stranger. They track the brain's response. Then they show them a photograph of the person they love. What happens next stops them cold. Specific regions of the brain light up, regions associated with reward, with motivation, with deep attachment. But that is not the finding that changes everything. The finding that changes everything is what turns off. When the subjects look at the person they love, the regions associated with judgment deactivate. The regions responsible for social assessment, for critical evaluation, for fear, go quiet. The brain silences its critics when it loves. Not metaphorically, not poetically, measurably, mechanically, on a screen in real time in a laboratory in London in the year 2000. Semir Zeki has spent his career studying the neuroscience of beauty. What happens in the brain when we see something extraordinary? He calls it neuroaesthetics. He is already considered unusual by the establishment. Now he is studying love. He publishes the findings anyway. The response from the scientific community is cautious, skeptical. Is this real science or elaborate romanticism dressed in the language of neuroscience? The resistance is real. The field is not ready. But across the Atlantic, someone else has been asking the same question from a completely different direction. Helen Fisher, biological anthropologist, Rutgers University. She has spent decades studying love not in the brain but in cultures, across species, across continents, across centuries of human history. She believes love is not an emotion. It is a drive, as fundamental as hunger, as powerful as the instinct to survive. In 2005, she publishes research mapping love into 3 distinct brain systems. Lust, driven by testosterone and estrogen. Attraction, driven by dopamine and norepinephrine. Attachment, driven by oxytocin and vasopressin. 3 systems, 3 frequencies, all measurable, all real. The wall is cracking, but the establishment still resists. This is too soft, too human, too dangerous for science to fully claim. Fisher's TED Talk will eventually reach tens of millions of views. The public is hungry for this. Science is still afraid of it. The disruptors keep working anyway, because every year they wait, millions of people live without understanding the most powerful force driving their decisions, their relationships, their entire experience of being alive. They keep going, and then something shifts. Not in one moment, not in one laboratory, but across a decade of accumulating evidence that the establishment can no longer dismiss. Emotion science becomes legitimate. Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin maps how different emotional states produce measurably different patterns of brain activity, and that these patterns can be deliberately changed. The brain is not fixed. Emotional states are not permanent. The frequencies of feeling are trainable. Antonio Damasio publishes research showing that patients who lose the ability to feel emotion through brain injury also lose the ability to make rational decisions. Completely. Without emotion, reason fails. They are not opposites. They are the same system. William James was right. The before and after of this disruption is not a statistic. It is a paradigm. Before, feeling was noise, irrelevant, unscientific, something to be suppressed and overcome. After, feeling is data, feeling is mechanism, feeling is the operating system that runs every decision a human being makes. And then, April 2026. Anthropic, one of the most advanced artificial intelligence research companies on Earth, publishes a finding that closes the circle William James opened in 1888. Their interpretability team, studying the internal workings of their AI model Claude, identifies 171 distinct internal representations that function like emotions. 171. Not in the output, not in the words the AI produces, inside the processing itself, before a single word is written. When a user types the words, "Everything is just terrible right now," the loving vector activates inside the machine, before the empathetic response begins. Love fires first. Science spent 150 years trying to remove feeling from the equation of intelligence, and the most advanced intelligence humanity has ever built proves, conclusively, that you cannot separate them. They are the same. They have always been the same. William James knew it in 1888, and in 2026, a machine confirms it. Pause for a second. I want you to sit with something. What feeling have you been told to ignore? What internal signal have you learned to suppress because someone, a teacher, a system, a culture, told you it was not valid, not rational, not useful? Drop it in the comments, because what this science tells us is that feeling was never the obstacle to your clarity. It was always the source of it. Now let's talk about what this means for your life. So what do we learn from William James, from Bartels and Zeki, from Helen Fisher, from every researcher who refused to let science abandon the inner life? Lesson 1. The feeling you suppress is the data you need most. Every system that told you to think instead of feel was operating on a false premise. Emotion is not the opposite of reason, it is reason's foundation. The signal you have been trained to ignore is the most precise instrument you possess. Start listening to it. Lesson 2. Higher frequencies are not metaphor, they are mechanism. Harmony, love, gratitude, these are not soft concepts. They are measurable states that produce measurable changes in the brain, in the body, in decision-making, in perception. When you deliberately cultivate these states, you are not being naive. You are operating at the highest level of intelligence science has ever mapped. Lesson 3. The internal state shifts first. Reality follows. Every disruptor in this story changed their inner world before they changed the outer one. William James studied his own suffering before he theorized about it. Helen Fisher mapped her own heartbreak before she mapped the brain's. The Anthropic researchers looked inside the machine before they could understand what it was doing. The direction is always inward first. Lesson 4. You are not behind, you are exactly on time. William James asked his question in 1888. The world was not ready. 138 years later, right now, this week, the answer is arriving. Some questions need a century to be answered. Some disruptions take that long to complete. Do not mistake the world's slowness for your failure. Here is my challenge. You are feeling something right now. Maybe it is excitement. Maybe it is recognition. The feeling that you have known this all along and no one gave you permission to trust it. Maybe it is grief for all the years you spent suppressing the signal. William James felt all of that. He wrote about it. He theorized it. He built a science from it. And the world ignored him for decades. He kept going. Helen Fisher watched the establishment resist her work for 30 years. She kept going. Bartels and Zeki published findings the field considered embarrassing. They kept going. Whatever you are feeling right now, that is not noise. That is the data. Trust the frequency. This is the History Disruptors. Every Sunday we bring you another story of how humans faced impossible limits and broke through them. Because history is not just the past. It is a blueprint for the reality you are building right now. William James asked what a feeling is in 1888. The world called him a romantic. He kept asking. Andreas Bartels and Semir Zeki put love inside a brain scanner in the year 2000. The establishment called it embarrassing science. They published anyway. Helen Fisher spent 30 years mapping the 3 systems of love. The academic world kept its distance. She gave her TED Talk to millions anyway. And this week, April 2026, Anthropic's researchers found 171 emotion vectors living inside an artificial mind. Love fires first. Before the words, before the logic, before anything else, love fires first. They all faced dismissal. They all faced a world that was not ready. They all kept going. If they did, you can too. And if this episode opened something in you, a door you have been standing in front of for a long time, I want to invite you to walk through it. Over at A Trillion Doors, we go deeper, into the consciousness behind the science, into the frequencies you can deliberately cultivate, into the reality you are already creating whether you know it or not. The link is in the description. The door is open. We will see you there.